party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home. Party, party, we like to party, party, party all night long. Party, party, we like to party, 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 never go home.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to episode 14 of the Ball Talk Pod. Of course, we're going to be talking Thunder basketball tonight and Chet Holmgren's return, but we want to kick it off with some Super Bowl talk, as that has just wrapped up.
That's right.
I think it was wrapped up several hours ago.
Yes.
Even though the game just ended.
Right. The long national nightmare is over. The Chiefs have not won the Super Bowl this year.
There will be a new defending champion next year. And I'll say this, I think it might create a new national nightmare because Eagles fans are crazy.
Oh, well, that's okay. I know some Eagles fans. They're nice guys. They're nice. No big.
Yeah.
There's some good ones out there too, just like any fan base. But Jalen Hurts is going to Disney World.
Yeah, and the Eagles win 40-22. Jalen Hurts, former Sooner. So there's your OU talk of the pod.
That's what I was about to say. I was going to say this is a win-win for OU fans. You either have like Creed and 6 other guys win it for the Chiefs again, or Jalen Hurts, Grant Calcaterra, and Lane Johnson get a Super Bowl. So we're kind of all over the board. We're taking over the NFL.
We couldn't lose.
We couldn't lose today as Sooner fans.
But yeah, Jalen won the MVP, rightfully so.
Yes.
I guess the only qualm there is maybe someone on the defensive line should have, because
I
think they sacked him. Yeah, it was his birthday. Had a pick 6.
It was also Saquon's birthday, right?
I think Saquon's birthday was yesterday. I don't think it was like actually today, but it was this weekend. Don't quote me on that, but
quote him.
The Eagles sacked Mahomes like 6 times. They were 1 away from a record. It was like we didn't talk football this year. We didn't even start this podcast till December, but the Chiefs, how they won games this year compared to in the past was like, okay, they don't beat themselves. They don't make big mistakes, and they just score enough points. Like the original Chiefs were like, Mahomes is averaging 5 touchdowns a game. And it's almost like they won with that. They won with ball control, and now they need to kind of merge the two, because it almost felt like they weren't electric enough. And that's an uneducated,
there was a stat at some point they were like 52% quarterback pressures, and they had 0 blitzes.
Yeah, they hadn't blitzed a single play, and we're getting home 50% of the time. But yeah, shout out to the Eagles. Shout out to the Eagles. I know we got a lot of Chiefs fans that listen, but
lots of them.
You've won 3. Yeah, all of our Chiefs fans. You've gotten 3 out of Mahomes, and I definitely don't think it's your last by any means.
Your last chance.
The GOAT talk between him and Brady is on hold just a little bit longer.
Did you see what Brady said? He was talking about the Super Bowl, as he should. Also, Tom Brady, not the best announcer.
No.
He's just, it's kind of bland. That's not what I'm talking about. But Tom Brady earlier this week was like, this is a must win for Patrick Mahomes. If he loses this, he's 3-2 in Super Bowls, and that's just that would be hard to sit with. I was like, okay.
Tom lost 3 of them.
And he won 7.
I know. So Mahomes needs to go on a little bit of a run, but again, I feel like the Chiefs are just too well ran, and if you had to bet right now, I don't know why you would bet on the Chiefs to win it next year.
I think they need to figure out their offensive. If Spag stays, I feel like they'll get back, but they need to figure out some offensive stuff after their OC left last year.
But with all that said, of all the coaches to figure that out, Andy Reid feels like a good bet to do so.
Right.
But yeah, there's your NFL talk. Congrats to the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, and the city of Philadelphia, I guess.
Yeah, climb those poles. They probably already greased the light poles.
Well, because we're going to switch to basketball talk now, and I don't think the city of Philadelphia wants to talk about the NBA. So...
Oh my gosh, they are just a dumpster fire. I'm gonna look at their record and
I actually got it pulled up. It's 20-32.
20-32.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to I thought they brought in Paul George to win. They brought in Paul George to lose.
They've won 20 times.
That's so terrible.
But I mean, we've talked about this before. It's big for Thunder fans because we own their pick this year, top 6 protected. As long as it's a lottery pick, I think it's fine. But it would be great to stick in that 8 range. But
wait, where are they staying? Oh, they're out of the play-in right now.
Currently,
they're 2 games out of the play-in, and have lost 3 in a row.
But the problem is the Bulls have traded Levine. I don't know how they're going to make. They have 2 teams above them that I don't know how much they care about winning in the Hawks and the Bulls. And so it's going to be hit or miss. I don't think they would advance out. Well, Embiid was seen today as being said that he's probably going to need surgery in the offseason to fix his knee. And so
at what point
it's bad.
At what point do you just like buy him out, pay him hundreds of $millions just to leave your franchise?
Well, he's fat, so you should trade him.
Do you think if Joel Embiid left, the process left the Sixers and went to, say, like a really well-run organization like the Heat, do you think that he would like play 82 games and he would like be the healthiest he's ever been?
No, because one, I don't think his personality goes well with the Heat at all.
Okay,
and so it would just
pick a different organization.
But like any good organization, like they wouldn't let him be him, and I just think his body is just not going to hold up. Like he's not. I'm glad he got his MVP out of the way because I don't see him playing more than 50 or 60 games the rest of his career.
Total?
No, per season. That would be a bold take.
He has 50 games left.
Make them count, Joel. Make them count.
God, that would be... I mean, Sixers fans have to be beside themselves. They had such a fun offseason getting Paul George. They had like all the hype of Tyrese Maxey, and they just like nothing came to fruition.
At least not this year. I mean, they're not getting any younger, and at least Maxey is young. They're going to have to find a way to build around him. But I didn't know this was going to turn into a 76ers podcast. But yeah, at least they have their Super Bowl. Moving on to the most exciting news in the sports world. Chet Holmgren made his return Friday night for the Oklahoma City Thunder after 89 days of Chetless basketball. And I guess at the time, a 40-9 record. So obviously we were really hurting without Chet. But he comes back. He comes back, and the Thunder take care of the Toronto Raptors, at least what was left of the Toronto Raptors after the trade deadline and injuries and things like that. I mean, their center, Jacob Poeltl, was out, who's kind of their defensive anchor, I would say. But they still had Scotty Barnes playing. Quickly was playing. I was not able to attend, but Chris was there. Chris, walk me through Chet's debut, man.
So, I'm usually a little late to the games, so we kind of rushed in to see because I wanted to be there when he got announced. It was really important to me to feel the crowd's energy as soon as he was announced. Because
it was announced he was starting. It was not for sure until like 30 minutes before he was starting.
Yep. I never actually saw that news because I was rushing to the game, but I kind of assumed he'd start just because like that's where the energy would be. I mean, with a guy like him who started his whole career, you don't really want to bring him off the bench the first time he's back, I feel like, or else you're kind of admitting that he's not fully healthy, I think. So I was expecting him to go last and like have like the introductions build
the moment, and like
because if you've never been to a Thunder game, Shea always is the last one off the bench when they call the starters,
and that's always how it's been. Like Russ was that for his years. Like whoever the best player is typically gets the last call. Yeah,
and so I half expected Shea to be like, all right, I'm gonna let Chet come off last off the bench. It's kind of his big return. Instead, Chet went first, and the crowd just loved it, and it was pretty electric. Again, I will say that Shea got a bigger reaction.
He's your MVP, so I get it.
But again, I think
all the times to not get it, it would have.
But I think there's a little bit of a buildup that the people like weren't really ready for the first person, so Shea gets louder because he's the last one.
And a point to that is, typically he was out; he did not play. We didn't have Lou Dort, Cason Wallace. We might have been missing one other person. I can't remember. The games are running together.
Which one?
Lou is typically the first person announced in the starting lineup. And there's not a cheer with that. It's everyone going, Lou.
Yes.
And so I think people, either one, were used to that, and two, he wasn't starting. So who knows how it was going to go.
Right.
You know, being the first one, everyone's like, oh, it's Chet. Whoa.
Yeah.
Like, it took him a second, but I've only seen videos of it. It was so cool because every single video, you sent me a video, several reporters posted it from their seats, and you can't hear the announcer.
No, it was pretty electric. It was very loud. He lost the tip, which
lost some vert with his hip.
Which I will say, he doesn't always win the tip. He's been winning more. He won them more at the beginning of the year, but like the previous years, he wasn't always winning the tip, which is totally fine. It's kind of inconsequential to the whole game. So, but I don't know how you felt, but I felt his presence on the defensive end, and I cheered really loud for every block. I stood up and
he had 4 of them in his debut. 4 blocks.
And it felt good to have just like young guards drive in. And I know Hartenstein's a good rim protector, but it's just
so different. It's so different.
Chet can just reach, and like they have no chance. But on the offensive end, it felt a bit clunky with him. And you could tell there were times, even on the defensive end, where Chet just like wasn't in game mode. He didn't really know where to be on the defensive end. Like a couple times he lost a guy as he fanned out and shot a 3 from the corner, you know, and then on the offensive end, it felt like he was trying to blend back in, which is totally acceptable. And we kind of talked about it before, that is something that's going to happen. And Thunder fans have to kind of take those bumps and bruises as we have them, because the ceiling is so much higher when you have Chet. So you have to be able to take those bumps and bruises with, you know, the ceiling that comes along with it. But, you know, there will be times you look at the court and be like, God, Chet, what the hell are we doing? Or you'll see like a stymied offense. I don't know what was your kind of take on his like return?
You know, I think Mark put it perfectly. We had a Markism after the game, and Perfect. He said,
I was going to bring it up too.
This has completed his return to play protocol. He is now just beginning his return to production.
The performance.
Yes, performance. And just an all-timer from Mark. Couldn't be more true. I mean, Chet only shot the ball 5 times. He had 4 points, 5 rebounds, and assists. He did have those 4 blocks. I think it was definitely like, one, he came back earlier than even that 3 to 5 week window was given. He beat it by a week. So it was only 2 weeks since the update that he came back. Which the coolest thing about that is, like Mark said, it's like, it's not like we rushed him back. Chet's body was just ready for this.
Right.
And I do think, yeah. And he said, you know, after the game, he's the first player in the history of the NBA to break his hip playing basketball.
Pretty cool stat.
Yeah. I mean, one of one.
Chet's one of one.
Secondly, he mentioned, he was like, if it was even like an inch or 2 lower, he was having surgery and probably was done for the year. And who knows how that was going to impact the longevity of his career and how effective he is.
Inches in a body are not, you know, pretty big, right?
Yeah. Every inch counts. But I think what he did out there, it was definitely put him out there and just see how it works. I thought it was interesting. We had discussed before what we thought, like rotation wise, what would happen. He took Chet and Hartenstein out at the same time in the first quarter.
It was that I did find that interesting. I was talking to my wife before, you know, during the game, and kind of I was doing the podcast a little bit with her, being like, so I think if Chet and Hartenstein come out at the same time, they might, you know, bring them back in, and then at the same time to see how they play together. And obviously there were times that they just left Chet. He only played 22 minutes. So they kind of left him on the bench a lot longer than like Hartenstein did. But
we also were blowing him out, so it wasn't like he had to be. But I mentioned that point because I don't know if he played a minute without another big on the court with him.
No, that was really interesting. He played the 4 the whole game.
Yeah, which I know is definitely something of them trying to push the comfortability, like make Chet uncomfortable, and something that he never did last year.
Right.
I mean, even I don't know how. I mean, obviously it's cross matching and things like that. I think even the few times you had him and Jay Will on the court last year, he was still the 5.
Right.
But with Hartenstein on the court, obviously it's a different kind of player.
The 5s, yeah.
Because Hartenstein isn't going to go out and shoot threes. Jay Will was. Hartenstein, he can play a stretch 5, but more as a playmaker and a passer than a shooter.
Yeah.
He still has not made a 3 in his Thunder career. But when they brought Chet back in without Hartenstein, Jay Will was at the 5 on Friday night.
I wonder if that has to do with like, this is a totally uneducated point of view, but I wonder if that has to do with like banging bodies down low, if they're trying to reduce the amount of times that Chet's like
having to bodying
like the bigger guy up down low, and then
to
kind of protect his hip. I mean, he's still like, they won't be able to do that forever, but like while you're 42-9, you might as well try to protect him as much as you can until you get to the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a point of protection. He didn't play in the Memphis game last night, which we'll get into, which some people had talked about how there's never been I don't know if there's been a time in the Thunder's history, especially in this iteration of them, that a team or a player was brought back and like set back-to-backs or sat the next game. Like usually when we bring guys back, it's like, no, they're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And they just get thrown back in like normal,
right.
No restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
As I said before, no one has ever broken a hip before playing basketball. So I'm sure there are different things. Mark said they have a plan, but it's fluid. It's kind of reactive more so to how Chet feels than necessarily saying like he's going to play 15 minutes and then 20. And then after 10 games, we're going to bump him up to 22. Like there's none of that. And again, it wasn't like we were playing the Celtics or the Luka-led Mavs.
Or the Grizzlies.
So it was definitely a trial. I wouldn't even say trial and error, but it was just they were trying things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I was out of town, so I didn't get to like sit down and watch it. But I've done my research, and you could tell, 1, he was excited to be out there. 2, his conditioning isn't where it needs to be. Which is very.
He broke his hip
and didn't play basketball for. I mean, he posted a video the day that they announced he was coming back, and I think
it went
January 25th was the date in the practice facility. So he's still working on his conditioning. I say all that. The spurt in the fourth quarter when he played with Dub, he brought it. Like he was doing things that it was like, oh, that's Chet. Like that's not a coming back from injury Chet. He turned around. He had a block on Scotty Barnes. He got a tech, which I loved.
It was bad tech.
Yeah, that but guy... it was so cocky though. Like the way that it goes, like he thinks he gets fouled on one end. He goes down, and he lets the guy. He doesn't let him go by it. But Chet, as a defender, people are gonna get past him, and then he blocks their shot.
I mean,
and he spiked that into the backboard.
Yeah,
like that ball lost PSI on that block. And as soon as that ball, like we got the ball and he knew it was going the way, he turned and clapped in that ref's face like, that's a foul. And you're right. I think it was weak, but it was like, all right, there's a little bit of attitude still. Chet's still in there,
He's got some dog to him. Yeah, totally.
But he flipped his hip, was able to get there to contest a dunk, and they asked him after the game. He got hurt on a contest, so it was a thought in a lot of people's minds, and still is. One game's just one game. Will he have any kind of hesitation to go make the kind of plays he was making last year and before the injury this year, where he would have been Defensive Player of the Year this year if he hadn't gotten hurt? And he said, if I ever get to the point where I second guess making winning plays on a basketball court, I'll just stop playing. Which great answer, very Thunder answer, but also
mentality.
It's
a cocky young man's mentality too.
Yeah, but he backs it up. That's the best part. As a Thunder fan, that's the best part.
I totally get it, but it's like in 30 years when he's like, yeah, I mean, there's always that, like, or in like 10 years when he's like still playing, he's like, I
did break my hip. I thought
I did break my hip. Yeah. I was thinking about like that, but
just contesting a dunk,
right?
Which is what he will be doing the rest of his career.
People will always try to dunk on him because he gets so many blocks.
Him and Wemby probably will have the
100%.
Most attempted posters.
Yes,
at least in the next 10 years.
And let's just talk about it now. If you are a shot blocker and you don't get posterized every once in a while, you're not really attempting to block like everyone's shot.
You're being too careful. It's what he said. You're not making a winning play. You're not attempting a winning play.
Business decision. So really good shot blockers will get dunked on.
Yeah. And Chet has.
Yes.
Like, it's not like he never has before. Wemby's been dunked on. I mean, all the greats. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's looked great with the context of he was out of basketball for several months, broke a hip.
So my biggest takeaway, not my biggest takeaway, my biggest excitement from his debut is that we have I think 6 and 7 days, or 5 games in 7 days or whatever. That will allow him to play some, and then they'll have what they call like the all-star mini camp, right? Where they're able to come in and practice, and they'll be able to clean up a lot of things that they've seen from on the court instead of not being able to do that after the all-star break. So it's kind of nice he's back, because it gives him more chance to like, all right, so we saw this out here, so we need to do this instead, kind of thing on the court. So just something to look out for. I think after the all-star break, it might look more fluid.
Yeah, it's a huge benefit of him coming back before this break, because everyone, I mean, we've said on this pod, Sharpie him in for the first game after the all-star break, which you can. You can. We were correct. He will be in the lineup. But it'll be interesting. Like you said, we play 5 games in 7 days. Coming up this week, I mean, we haven't talked about the game yet, but we did play Memphis the day after his debut. He sat, which was totally understandable. Didn't surprise me at all. And then this week we're back at home for a mini homestand. We have the Pelicans on Monday night, the Heat on Wednesday night, and then we go to Minnesota on a back-to-back the Wednesday and Thursday. Then you have the All-Star break, and the Thunder don't play again until February 21st. So we play the 13th, which is this Thursday. Is the last game for the All-Star break. The All-Star festivities wrap up Sunday. And then I'm sure they let the guys kind of, if they need, some people might go to a beach or something. I don't know. But they'll come back in Monday or Tuesday, and then they get, like you said, basically another mini camp where they can work through things and try to review what he has done in these games since he's come back. But then also, I think the biggest thing is just conditioning and getting up to what he needs to do to play. You know, he wasn't a 30-minute a game guy last year. He was like 28, 29 minutes. So it's not like he has to expand out. He played 22 minutes, but 1, I don't think they were the highest leverage. And 2, especially when we get to the playoffs, he has to get to the point where he can push it to 33, 34, 35 minutes. If he wants to be as effective as we want and need him to be to do what we think this team can do. So great timing on this. I honestly sometimes can't even believe still that he's back already.
I know. Kind of crazy. Seems surreal. But
I'm not complaining.
The Thunder did have a game last night, and they did play the Grizzlies without Chet once again, which is nothing new for this team. And it was almost
like it was a normal basketball game watching after the Chet. It was like, no, this is the team I remember.
Yeah, 100%. And they went out and dominated the Grizzlies. Dominated them.
In a game that was very hyped as like 1 versus 2 in the West. If Memphis had won that game, the lead would have been dropped down to, I think, 5 or 5.5.
Yeah.
It went the other way. The Thunder now have a 7.5 game lead on the 2 seed in the Western Conference. I even tweeted on our account just that Chet was out when the injury report was released, and some Memphis fan like quote tweeted it and said like, Chet doesn't want this smoke, like da 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 da. And in the middle of the game, we got up by like almost 30, and I tweeted back at him, and I was like, "Is this the smoke you were referencing?" What are you talking about?
Insane. And they did come back. I mean, the NBA is a game of runs, right? And so they did come back and kind of make it a game for a little bit. But the Thunder just continually had answers for every big shot that the Grizzlies had. I mean, it was
the answer had one name and one name only, and that was Aaron Wiggins.
Yes. He was insane. What was he?
He had
8 for
8
10?
threes.
8 for 10. He was 80%.
I'm pulling up his stats right now. Let's see what was he from 3?
Insane.
8 of 13. 8 of 13. 26 points, 11 rebounds. He started because Queso and Lou Dort were out again, and so was Chet. But man, oof, Cam Johnson could never.
I mean, it's just so funny to me that people are like, "Oh, we can't shoot the ball. We need somebody who can reliably shoot the ball." And then for like 2 months, we've had either Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins making,
and sometimes
4.
both.
Yeah, making like 4, and it's just so funny how people are overreactive online.
I mean, I'm just looking at their stats right now. Isaiah Joe's shooting above 40%. Now he's at 40.1 for the year, which was a huge question mark for a while. And then Wiggins, looking at his stats this year, he's down at 37%, which I say down at 37%. 10 years ago, the Thunder would have killed to have anyone shoot 33% from 3.
Yes.
And now we have a whole team that shoots 35% or above. But both of those guys have, one, just reinforced the idea that this team did not need to make a major trade. Reinforced the idea that the only acquisition we needed was a healthy Chet, which we now have. And lastly, the contracts they're on are stupid.
So cheap.
Like Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe's, it steadily increases. Aaron Wiggins, the most we will pay him over the next 4 years is this year. It declines every year. So as this team gets expensive and you get the extensions to Dub and Chet and Shea and maybe even Hartenstein with how he's playing right now,
I'd give
he's gonna become less and less of an issue. And his contract arguably is, unless it's like a given context freak situation, we go and we need to make a move next year for something. It's almost untradeable because of the convenience it provides and the roster. I wouldn't say flexibility, but just comfort of we have this guy. He can come in and hit 8 threes in a game. And I just said that, and I'm not talking about Isaiah Joe, which is something I never thought I would say in the last couple of years.
And he can create his own shot. There's time he gets in the lane, does a little spin move, hits a nice.
We start the game with him a lot. Like, we'll get him going to the hoop. Because it's that little pump fake and then spin around. Like he'll do a 1 dribble, spin back, and get a layup right at the rim.
Or he'll do
guys.
Or he'll do a little bit of a fadeaway shot, and it's quite the shot. It looks a lot like Shea. It's such a good way for him to create his own shot, and to have that as well as him out there making 8 threes is such a benefit. And he knows the Thunder so well. He knows the system. He's such a Thunder guy. It's like Ben said, it's an untradeable. It's like it's a priceless contract where you just like, there's no price or person I think that I would trade Aaron Wiggins for, or Isaiah Joe, or anybody on this team at this point.
I mean, a good friend of the pod, Breek, texted me during one of the games and said Aaron Wiggins would have been like the 5th or 6th best player on most of that first iteration of the Thunder teams. Like the Russ and KD teams that we were just searching for shooting anywhere.
He might have
Aaron Wiggins would have been better than most
player.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree.
He defends at a high level. He shoots at a high level. He's a smart basketball player. He moves
the ball.
If he needs to be, he can be invisible on the offensive board or the offensive side, which is such a benefit to somebody who can score like he can. So, I mean, I think he would have been 3rd or 4th for sure.
I can't disagree with that because those teams were hard to watch sometimes. And that was how they were set up. It was Russ and KD, please combine for like 80, and then we'll find another 20 or 30 from elsewhere. But I mean, Wiggs played great. Shea played great. Dubs come back from his little wrist injury, which he still wears like KT tape or some kind of splint. He's shot the ball well. He's had over 20 the last 2 games, 25 against Memphis. And I'd like to point out, one, the refs in the Memphis game were just like calling everything.
Oh, it was such a hard game to watch.
To the point where Shea, Hartenstein, and Dub all ended with 5 fouls. Each of them.
I thought at one point Shea fouled out.
I'm sure he was about to. But so Shea sat long. I think he came back in with like under 5 minutes left in the fourth, which is later than almost ever in a competitive game. And Memphis, as you mentioned, was kind of making a bit of a run. I mean, we won by 13. They had a chance to cut it to single digits at one point. And Mark, I think it was a great coaching strategy in terms of the playoffs and things like that. Like there will come times where we have to have someone not named SGA go make a play or stall a run. And that lineup with Dub and Hartenstein, and I'd have to go back and I can't remember who the other three were on the court at that time.
It was Caruso and I think Wiggins.
Yeah, there'd be one more, but regardless, that crew, they took the punch and then punched back. So much so I think the league got back up to like 17 or 18, and it was like, okay, this is over, even though there's 4 minutes left, because then Shea came back in.
Yeah, Shea came back in with like 4 minutes left, and then by 2 minutes left, everyone was out. They pulled the starters. Memphis waved the white flag, and we played we showed them our flag.
It was Duke's time. But yeah, shout out to Dub. He's been playing great. Hartenstein had a great game as well. He got a double-double last night, 12 points, 14 rebounds. There's an account. I'm sorry, I don't have the name of it, but there's an account on Twitter, and I'll find it and give him the shout out when I can. They like post the like, oh, Shea's passed Paul George for most points, Lou Dort for most threes in Thunder history or NBA history or whatever. The amount of rebounds that Hartenstein is getting in half a season and how high he is in our record books already is like, man, we did not have a lot of size.
Never rebound. We just never rebound. That's
well,
crazy.
It was Russ. Russ got every rebound.
Yeah, so, that's true. Pat and stats.
Hey, he got an MVP for it, rightfully so. But he's played great. I'm so curious to see how this continues to morph and gel with Chet and Hartenstein.
Yep.
And, like we mentioned, Chet played the 4 the whole night. I feel like Mark knows what he has at Chet at the 5, even with the health being what he's working back from, the injury.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I feel like he knows. He's like, I can put Chet at the 5 and be fine at any given time. I need to figure out how he feels at the 4 and what works around him at the 4.
Right.
So I don't think it's like, oh no, we're not going to put him at the 5 anymore because of the injury. Like you like kind of protect him from banging against Joel Embiid or whatever.
I just thought for his first game back.
For sure. But I don't think that's a long-term thought.
But I think, not to divert on what you're saying, but I think a guy like Joel or a guy like Nurkic or any of those big kind of bruising bigs, I think you don't put Chet on them. I think you put Isaiah Hartenstein, and
he's a roamer.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think it would be beneficial to play Chet at the 4. Yeah,
it's matchup driven for sure. I mean, what I'm curious to see, Chet is playing tomorrow, so is Lou Dort. So we will have our full allotment of starters or who we think. Queso's out, which is a point that I don't love. He's no longer in the Rising Stars Challenge next week. He withdrew from that with his shoulder strain. Hopefully he just needs an all-star break and he can kind of
relax and
come back and be good to go. Oos is still out.
What's Oos injured?
Calf, I think. Like a weird name for a calf strain again, but not the same one Hartenstein had.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd have to pull it up and look, but it's some kind of strain, some weird muscle or something. But tomorrow night we played the Pelicans, and I know the Pelicans are not good, and their point guard Dejounte Murray tore his Achilles, so they're even
12
worse.
and 40.
They're trying to capture the flag at this point. But Zion is back and healthy at this current time. The Mavs would have traded him already because he's fat. But
Nico
he
Harris,
creates an issue. Like the Pelicans now, I mean, their starting lineup is like Zion would be at the 5, I guess. But it's like, do you put Hartenstein on him and have Chet roam? But then who's Chet guarding? Because it's not like another like I think tomorrow's matchup will be very fascinating in terms of how does Mark match up our two bigs against a team that, one, doesn't really have a traditional big right now. They have Yusuf Misi. I'll go back and say that he's a rookie center out of Baylor who's played pretty well. So he'll start next to Zion, but it's like, okay, do you put Hartenstein on Zion and then Chet on Misi, or do you put Dub on Zion and put Hartenstein on Misi and Chet on Trey Murphy? Like, I don't know how that matchup's going to look, and it's going to be fun to see because Mark, is thinking of something crazy, and he'll cross match, and even like he'll do stuff that doesn't work because he needs to see how it looks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be trial and error until he finds out how this flows.
They are not good. They're coming into our building where we've
23-3.
3 games. Yeah.
One of them was Chet's game that he got hurt.
Not to say that, and the other 2 are Dallas, I think. But that's just to say they are an NBA team. They get paid to play basketball, so there's always a chance to lose. That's why we roll the ball out. So, we got to go in with that 0-0 mentality to see, how it all works.
Yeah, Thunder are 14.5 point favorites tomorrow night. I would anticipate them covering that spread, but
Ben apparently does not have the 0-0 mentality.
Why? Because I expect them to cover the spread.
You expect them to cover the spread?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'm
all right.
0-0. They're going to go 1-0 against the. Mark doesn't gamble. I know Mark doesn't gamble. But that's okay. I'll do it for him.
Gamble.
No, at least not on NBA games. But
you can't bet. You can't gamble on anything, right?
Yeah, you can.
Oh,
just not your league.
I don't understand the rules of gambling.
Yeah. But yeah, Thunder bringing the Pelicans into Paycom tomorrow night. Should be another game where Chet can kind of get his feet wet, figure out how things work. The Heat come into town on Wednesday night. They've been decent. The Heat are always decent. They're in the play-in currently in the East with a even 500 record, 25-25. They have an all-star in Tyler Hero. They just got out of the Jimmy Butler drama. He got traded to Golden State. So that should be a competitive basketball game regardless of...
Brought in Aaron Wiggins.
Or Thunder Killer.
Andrew Wiggins.
Andrew Wiggins. Known Thunder Killer.
Still
and has killed the Thunder this year. But yeah, that'll be interesting. And then wrapping up with the Timberwolves Thursday night on the second night of a back-to-back. It'll be curious to see where and when Chet plays this week. Because I don't think he plays all 3 of those games. I know he's playing tomorrow night, and then I would assume they split up the back-to-back. I do not know. Like, I don't know if they're like, we'll play him the first one because it's at home.
They might show him at the Heat just because they play they have the craziest Timberwolves schedule. They play the Timberwolves before the All-Star break, and then 2 out of the next 3 games on the other side of the All-Star break.
Yeah, we open at Utah and then have a home and home with Minnesota right out of the break.
So I feel like
crazy.
If you're looking at like what lineups work against what teams or what type of teams, you play Chet against the Heat and you rest him against the Timberwolves because you have 2 more chances to see him against the Timberwolves.
Yeah, I see that. And also, I don't think there's any kind of competitive advantage to not playing him against the Timberwolves because the iteration, like we mentioned with this little time off and this mini training camp, the iteration that you see of the Thunder Thursday night in Minnesota will not be the same team, I guess, whenever we play Minnesota after the All-Star break, just because of comfortability, Chet's conditioning, things like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Speaking of the All-Star break, before we move over to some Anthony Davis talk, Shea and Dub were drafted to their All-Star teams, which is cool. They're on different teams. Shea's on Chuck's team, which is basically all international players and Donovan Mitchell. And then Dub got drafted to Kenny Smith's team, which he made a point. And I'm sure they were told by the NBA, this is how you're going to draft. Because Shaq's team is all of the aging stars. It's LeBron, Steph, KD, James Harden, et cetera, et cetera. Kenny drafted Ant. Jalen Brunson was up there. He drafted Dub with the 8th overall pick. Or 11th, like early for him. Said he was going to especially for a reserve.
Award winning.
And then Shaq said that's one of my favorite players, which is awesome. But Shea got drafted 8th, which was so weird. it doesn't mean anything, but it's Shea and a bunch of power forwards and centers, so he should get a lot of run in that.
I wonder which. Do you think Mark's gonna
coach one like Shea?
I hope he coaches the opposite. I hope he coaches like LeBron, Steph, and all them just to get away.
Get away and then see how he would guard Shea.
Yes, it's to be such a Mark thing to be like studying Shea to be like, all right, we gotta. I mean, Mark said publicly he doesn't coach Shea. Like Shea's like one of those players that like is very self.
You put him in positions, but you don't really
tell him how to do things. You don't. So it would just be funny for Mark to like kind of examine Shea and Dub from the other side.
He'll either, well, I don't know. We don't know who's gonna coach what. They even asked him about it in the last press conference, and he's like, I don't know how that works out yet.
He's not going to know shocking until he shows up in San Francisco.
He's like, who am I coaching? Oh, cool.
And then he's just going to stand there. Marky Squints is what I've been calling him. He's going to stand there and squint at the board.
And not say a word.
I hope
he chew his gum.
I hope he has challenges. I hope he challenges.
Like the first play of the game the All-Star format this year is 3 NBA teams. The All-Stars divided up amongst those 3, and then the winner of the Rising Stars team, they play in like a tournament. And it's first to 40 wins the game, each individual game. And I want Mark to challenge like the first basket.
Yeah.
The first foul call.
Yeah.
And then lose it and then realize he can't do anything else the rest of the day, just goes and sits down on the bench for the first time. I don't know if he's ever sat down during a game.
He squats. He'll get down in a squat and like talk to the assistant coaches every once in a while.
That's it.
And that's it. And then they'll just go stand at the scorer's table.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see them at All-Star Weekend. Someone that is not going to be at All-Star Weekend, Chris, Anthony Davis.
Who? The Dallas Mavericks star?
The skinny, not fat, fits the culture Dallas Mavericks star Anthony Davis.
Defensive-minded Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Wait, he is not going to All-Star Weekend. Why, Ben?
Well, he's
so healthy.
The epitome of health is what Anthony Davis is. But he is not going to All-Star Weekend because he is expected to miss multiple weeks with a left adductor strain, which is basically a groin strain.
It was non-contact too. Did you see it?
Yeah.
He was like playing defense and then he like stepped wrong and he limped off the court after that.
And what was crazy, the Mavs looked so good.
They looked really good.
Like, I'll give them props for it. They looked so good in that first half. I mean, AD had like 20 and like he had a 20 and 10 double-double by halftime.
Mm-hmm. He looked really good playing the 4.
And he had sat before leading up to the trade in that first game or two post Luka trade with this injury. Like with a left adductor strain. Like they said that's why he was sitting. He was nursing that back. And he even met with the reporters after the game, like, oh, it was just a little tweak. I'm fine. And then it came out tonight that there's a chance it might require surgery. But thank goodness he's not fat.
Well worth shipping your 25-year-old
generational superstar.
Who just took you to the final. Well worth it.
Who makes his debut tomorrow night for the Lakers.
And he is going to... Wait, hold on. Just a second. Keep talking.
Yeah, I mean... Dallas has it so bad, man.
They're playing the Jazz tomorrow.
Oh, he might play 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh, he might play 10 minutes and score 100 points.
Yeah.
My goodness, is he going to be on the warpath?
Also, it's like he doesn't look good in the Lakers jersey. Like they released the pictures. I'm like, you don't fit that.
Is it because he's fat?
Yes. You see all the bulges, you know.
Yeah.
The Navy hit it better. You know what I'm saying? I'm wearing Navy right now. I get it.
Yeah, dark colors are slimming. I get it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. The Mavs screwed him over twice with the trade and losing his contract and putting him in a jersey that doesn't hide his fat rolls. That's what we've cracked it. I get why he's mad.
The Mavs are just trying to embarrass the poor fella.
And so far, they're doing great.
They're doing a good job, yeah. But just a wild development in this whole trade.
Well, I mean, two things to touch on before we get out of here on this trade. One, you've made a bad trade as a GM, and we talked about this a little bit on last week's pod after the Luka trade was announced. The reporters for the team on the last, the Mavs played Thursday in Boston, had a big win, beat them there without AD. AD debuts in Dallas. It's the first game post-trade. And the reporters after the game on Thursday were like asking fans, please do not hurt anyone. Like they had to ask people to not hurt people at a basketball game because of how pissed off people are. I don't know how you don't think this is a bad trade after that. Like, that's just horrible.
Did you hear what the fans were chanting? He's not fat. Bring him back.
They're not wrong. They are not wrong. One, it's a bad trade because of that. And two, another crazy thing that is somewhat tied to this. The Lakers made a pretty decent trade, in my opinion, for a young upcoming center named Mark Williams from Charlotte. They used the picks and the players that they didn't trade to Dallas for Luka to go and get Luka a rim-running athletic big that he could throw lobs to in the same mold as Derek Lively, with not as much of a defensive impact, but a bit more developed offensive game. He's had some health issues. He's been missed time with the back. He's had some other things. The trade was rescinded yesterday. And so Shams posts oh yeah, the Lakers trade has been rescinded. And I'm sure Mavs fans are like, is it the Luka trade?
Yeah.
Is it rescinded? But yeah, so now the Lakers, one, in terms of impacting the Thunder, aren't as scary because they don't have, a young athletic big. They have Jackson Hayes, who doesn't scare anyone.
He could.
According to Lakers fans, Nikola Jokic should be afraid. I saw a Reddit post that they're like, oh, the Nuggets don't want to see this year. And I was like, I think the Nuggets do. But I mean, it's crazy.
I mean, you have LeBron, who's playing out of his mind.
He had a 40-point game against Golden State on Thursday night. He still got it.
So he still got it. Luka's still got it. So obviously they're dangerous, but without a big, and being out rebound. I mean, if it happened to the Thunder for years where, teams would come in and be bigger than them and out rebound them and get more shots, and it would just look bad. So you just wonder how that's going to work without a big, but
it's just crazy times in the NBA, man. Trade deadline week is crazy. It's all anyone talked about leading up to the Super Bowl.
Which was a stinker, as we talked about.
Yeah, trade deadline week was way more exciting than the Super Bowl. But yeah, Chris, before we get out of here, I want to ask you one question.
And I'll give you two answers. One's a lie and one's a truth. You decide which one it is.
Okay, here we go. Who in the West scares you the most post trade deadline in terms of being in the Thunder's way to get out of the Western Conference and to the NBA Finals?
Obviously, before the Luka trade, it was the Mavs, just because they've kicked her ass, and like I've been told, it doesn't matter until we beat the Mavs in a playoff series. I don't know. I think we have as basketball fans, we have longer memories, and so I feel like, just because of the names, LeBron scares me, Steph scares me. I don't want to play KD because he's such a dynamic player. But I would say, if I had to choose a team, I would hate to lose. I think it's more of who I'd hate to lose to. I think I'd hate to lose to the Nuggets, and kind of because Russ is on that team, it feels like it would just feel like his last ditched effort to stop the Thunder from winning a championship.
Which, yeah, it'd be like a double-edged sword of I want Russ to do well, but also this team is not one that I think should lose. They should be I don't think, as it currently stands, it is the Thunder and then everyone else.
Right.
And I know this is a biased podcast. I don't think that's overly biased. And I've seen national people tweet that, especially after the shellacking of Memphis last night.
And the
number 2 seed
of the Williams trade.
Yes. So is that your lie or is that your real answer? And you were going to give two answers.
Wow. I think the truth is, I think the Nuggets and I think the Rockets defensively scare me. Like if we have one of those games where we can't shoot the ball very well. But overall, I think the Nuggets scare me the most because they have the best player in the world.
Not the MVP, but yes, the best player in the world right now.
Who scares you the most? The Clippers? You've been talking a lot of game about the Clippers being really scary.
No, I haven't.
You have?
No. I don't think the Clippers have been good.
That's your lie.
No. They've been playing. I think I probably have said they're playing better, but they also are 5-5 in their last 10. They lost to Indiana at home last week in a game they blew.
So Ben loves the Clippers.
There's my lie. It's Denver. It's Denver as they currently stand. They're playing well. And like you said, any series against the best player in the world will have some kind of issues in terms of overcoming that.
Right.
And I still think, like, depending on AD status, Dallas has to be up there because, again, they were playing well. But it's the same thing that happens every year. It's who's healthiest kind of really determines 100%. Who goes far.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's Denver and a healthy Mavs team. And then after that, I like our chances in a 7-game series against every team, honestly, right now. But those are the two I would be most concerned about.
Not to say I don't think we could win a 7-game series versus any of these Western teams or the Eastern teams. But I would be.
It would be harder against some than others.
That's the point. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But with that, we're gonna wrap it up tonight. We'll be back later this week with some more reactions on Chet's most recent games and get you into the All-Star break. But with that, we'll talk to you all later.
Shout out Thomas Dietrich for winning the Waste Management Open.
Oh, yeah. Shout out Thomas Dietrich. Blew everyone away. Won by like 7 strokes.
Yeah,
there's your golf talk. There's your golf talk. That'll be ramping up as Masters Week comes around and other tournaments. But
there's nothing better than sitting in your underwear on the couch watching Masters Sunday, just taking a little nap.
Ooh. Jim Nance singing lullabies.
Oh, just talking your ear off and you not hearing a word because you're asleep. Then you wake up for the final hole and realize Tiger's winning. Oh,
that's the dream.
What a weekend that will be.
What a weekend that'll be. And we'll talk to y'all later. See you.
All night long. Party, we like to party, all night long.